Hi dear students, I hope you all did a great PGI exam, and I hope you all took all the safety precautions, and which was the need of the hour in June 2020, and I hope you gave a great exam. And after the exam, I always I try to discuss with the students and try to find out the how was this exam, and was it any different from any previous exam, or anything new was there in the exam, and or what were the top resources. So I thought I'll share with you my analysis of this exam, so that if you're a future PGI Chandigarh aspirant, you have insight into what went on in the June 2020 PGI exam. And if you notice, on this very channel, 2 days back, 3 days back, I had given tips for the PGI exam, and I had predicted that there will be visuals in the exam, and this was the new trend this was the most important change that we saw in the PGI exam this time. PGI exam this time had around 25 to 30 visual questions. And the reason was, and I already told this reason in my previous video, if you people were following up our channel, I'd already talked about that this is a new change in PGI, that now we are having a computer-based test. In a computer-based test, it becomes very, very likely that the examiner will use more of a visual or a video kind of a thing to make the question more interesting, and test you for multiple abilities, not just your text reading ability, also your visual analysis ability. And I believe this change is going to stay, and probably in the next PGI exam, the number of visuals will be more than what we have today. So this is one of the predictions that I have for a future PGI exam. And if I show you the pattern here, and I'm happy that the students appreciated our prediction, that we had visuals on radiology, ECG, histopathology, pulse, murmur, perianal fistulas and surgery. So we had a good number of variety of visuals, and we had a clinical predominance of visuals. And in the paraclinicals, the most of the visuals were based on pathology. That is what we could understand from the the discussion that we had with the students. Then we also probed the students about what were the important subjects. And as we had rightly predicted on this very channel, that in the first prop subjects, the most important subject for PGI Chandigarh is biochemistry. And this was the most important review that the students also gave. Biochemistry was the most important first prop subject. Biochemistry, genetics, cell cycle, molecular biology, all this is very, very important as far as PGI Chandigarh goes. So as far as PGI Chandigarh goes, biochemistry is more important than anatomy and physiology. So this is how the mass distribution is, and this is how they have followed it in this exam also. So I think this is a good take-home message for future aspirants. In the second prop subjects, or in the paraclinicals, pathology was the most important subject. And this time the change in pathology was, there were histopathology, image-based questions, there were visual questions, there were visuals like, on the recall, the people, recalled visuals on RCC, granulomas, small cell cancer of the lung, RPGN, and the pathology was the most important second prop subject here. And histopathology visuals were a new thing this time, and I think that kind of helps a future aspirant, that even if you're preparing for AIIMS or PGI, both the exams now have a fair number of visuals. I think that solves a complexity that we had in the past, that AIIMS had visuals and PGI did not have visuals. Now in PGI Chandigarh also you have visual questions to appear for. And as far as the core of the exam, I believe that the clinical subjects were the core of the exam. Even when they talk about microbiology, the questions on microbiology were slightly on the tougher side, with a lot of clinical integration. That means there were questions on rare bacteria, but the question was on the antibiotic based on the bacteria. So you had to kind of correlate the two things. So that correlation was very important, that integration was important. But overall length of each question was small. It was not a long length question. There were no very few or almost nil long stem clinical questions were not there. But still it takes time to do a PGI Chandigarh exam. And I talked about this in my previous video also, that in PGI Chandigarh you have to decide on each choice. So actually you have 250 questions, but actual decision points are 1250. So it takes time. But on the basis of the survey and the review that we did with the students, most students did not have a problem with time management, barring a few people who said that time was an issue. But I feel personally that the time taken for the exam was slightly more than the last November PGI exam, based on what I've talked to students last year also. So I feel that this paper, although it was a CBT, but because of the visuals and because of each choice you had to think over it, it took a longer time than the usual. And if we try to look at the clinicals, medicine, obs and gynae, surgery were the predominant source of questions. But overall, the number of questions in medicine were more than obs and gynae and surgery. So I think that gives you an idea on the distribution and the style of the paper. And a lot of people have asked me that what about the repeats? So this is a new trend that we have seen even in the last PGI exam also. Even in the last PGI exam, the verbatim straight repeat from previous PGI exams was very less. And this trend is continuing still in this exam also, which makes me feel that but if you look at the paper, there were no unusual topics. So that tells us that for PGI exam, we need to be thorough in our concepts, we need to be thorough in our class notes, and even if we don't look at the previous paper, it would not affect it too much. But you should always look at the previous paper to get the feel of how the paper really feels like. But don't look for verbatim repeats is the message that I think is clear in this exam also. And if we look at the AIMS exam also, we saw this similar kind of thing in the AIMS also, that gradually the pattern is going towards less of repeats. In this PGI, it was less of repeats. And time management, only children who had an issue with time management were who did not follow the dictum of managing 45 questions in each half an hour. So what happens is, if you go slow in the first half an hour, then it is difficult to compensate later on, because the number of decision points in PGI exam is much more than any other exam. For example, this year in the AIMS exam, you had 200 decision points, while in PGI exam, you have 1250 decision points, and that takes time. So I feel that most people who appear for both AIMS and PGI this year, they felt PGI exam took a lot more time than the AIMS exam. But yet, if you notice that if you start at a good speed from the beginning, then you don't have any problems in time management in this exam. So that was the feedback that I got from most of the students. And when we asked the students about the resources, the topmost resource the students talked about was class notes. And the students were very happy with some direct questions from our test and discussions and the regular class discussions. There were some questions from the CBT that we have recently conducted, and even from the AIMS CBT that we have conducted. And AIMS capsule was very important, and many people felt that that this paper was doable if you had done those resources clearly. And when we asked the student about to rate the resources, again the topmost resource was class notes. And if you notice in the entire resources, previous PGI papers was not considered as valuable as you would have thought in the previous year's papers. And the reason was less number of repeats, but more questions on the usual topics and more questions on the class notes. And because of the visuals, people were happy with the DVT also, which is a new thing that mostly people would be happy with DVT after the NEET PG and the AIMS exam. This time, because PGI also had visuals, people were very happy with the DVT, T&D discussions, regular class notes. And unique thing and important thing is that some topics were repeated from the recent AIMS exam also. So I think that is also a good message to take, that once you give the AIMS exam, look at those topics. They might be repeated in PGI, they might be repeated in JIPMER also. So that's a good thing that we could learn from here. And if we look at the overall impression here, it was a balanced paper. Subject-wise distribution was as expected. Biochemistry, pathology, medicine, surgery, obs and gynae were the prime source of questions. And the idea in the paper was mark what you know and leave what you have no idea about. DAMS class notes was the most important resource. Rote learning of previous papers is no longer the strategy for PGI exam. So I think with this, we have given you an idea on this exam and what was new here. If I give you in one word, the most important new thing that has happened in 2020 June PGI exam was visuals. So keep it in mind, future aspirants. I believe visuals would be there even in the November PGI exam. I believe that now we are looking at a change in the style of questions in PGI exam. They are going towards less of repeats, more of visuals, more of understanding based things, but the overall length of the questions remains to be small, and I've given you the distribution already. I believe this would be of a lot of value for people appearing for the PGI exam in the November month, and do look at this video to get an idea on what went on in the June 2020. And I also want to take this moment to wish you all the best. And I know that in this paper, the number of people who appeared for the PGI exam in June 2020 was much lower as compared to the November exam. So if you have given this exam, I hope you've done a great exam, and I hope we see you here and we take an interview of yours and we talk about your journey. I wish you all the best, and keep preparing for the next JIPMER exam also. That in the Central Institute exam in the mid-year, I always believe it's a good idea to take your chances in all three exams, because sometimes you may get your branch of your choice in one or the other, and it's always a good idea to keep preparing for all three, because we see a lot of commonness in between, because you saw questions, similar topic questions were there in the AIMS exam, some topics were repeated in the PGI exam, so that helps you when you're preparing. And I also want to take this opportunity to tell you to be safe, take care of yourself, and be positive. I wish you all the best for the results. God bless you.